Welcome to this free training video from RiskCentric. Hi, my name's Steve Dance and I'm the Managing Partner of RiskCentric. We specialise in helping organisations to develop business continuity and incident management plans. This online training course will show you the business continuity management process and the tools used at different stages of plan development. One of our key aims is not just to tell you how to develop a business continuity plan, but to also show you what each component of your plan should look like when it's done. So at each stage during this training course, we'll be showing you a worked example, and the templates that we show are available for purchase and download from our website for unrestricted use. Basically, there are 5 main stages in the development of a business continuity plan. The first stage, priorities and tolerances, sets the scope of all subsequent plan development. In this stage, we understand what the operational priorities of our organisation are. These will be the things that we do to deliver products and services to our marketplace, and the sensitivity and impacts associated with operational disruption to them. We then go on to identify the parts of our organisation, such as IT systems, people, premises and equipment, that we rely on for those activities to operate. The next step is to ensure that these supporting resources are capable of being recovered to meet the continuity requirements of the operational priorities. We refer to these as core capabilities because they support all operational priorities and indeed other activities within the organisation. The aim at this stage is to ensure that we have sufficient business continuity capability within the organisation's infrastructure to meet the recovery requirements of operational priorities. If core capabilities fall short, it may be necessary to invest in strengthening them or alternatively accept a little more risk in the event of a disruption. Once we have confirmed that our core capabilities can provide an acceptable level of recovery, we can start thinking about what actions specific parts of the organisation will take in the event that business continuity plans are invoked following a major operational disruption. Departmental response plans will include the identification of a leadership team and establishing roles and responsibilities within each team. Although part of an overall business continuity plan, incident management fulfills a slightly different purpose. Its focus is on responding to the initial stages of an incident, gaining control of the situation, understanding the impact and the levels of operational impairment, and subsequently invoking all or part of the organization's business continuity plan. Incident or crisis management is primarily focused on protecting the organization's reputation and brand with its customers, external parties and the media. For this reason, the incident management team is normally formed of the senior management of the organization because of the significant decisions which may have to be made during a major incident and the external parties that they will communicate with. Communication strategies are a common thread and framework that holds the whole plan together during invocation. In this instance, it's the glue that holds together the core capability recovery activities, departmental actions, and the incident management team. The final step in the development of a business continuity plan is the implementation of an oversight, assurance, and awareness framework. The activities performed here are designed to ensure that the plan, once developed, remains relevant to the needs of the organisation and remains fit for purpose. Your business continuity plan, or framework as we prefer to call it, consists of several related parts. A priorities assessment focusing on the main operational priorities of the organisation, which then drives the design of core recovery capabilities in terms of workplace, information systems, specialised equipment and third-party services. Once the core recovery capabilities are broadly aligned with operational priorities of the organisation, we can then start to think about designing specific aspects of the business continuity plan, focusing on internal communications during a major operational disruption and what specific actions will need to be taken to resume business activity to an acceptable level. Once the specific recovery considerations for operational priorities have been developed, we'll start thinking about the incident management process. Here, we focus on creating a senior management team to assess and respond to the initial impacts of a major incident and how they should communicate with the outside world. Our final step is putting in place a process to ensure that our plans stay fit for purpose and that the wider organisation is aware of what will happen if our plans are invoked and what they will need to do. So you can see, although we often use the term business continuity plan, it's actually a framework of several components that help us to focus on priorities, ensure that we have the overall capability to meet those priorities, and define actions to be taken by different parts of the organisation during a major incident and/or operational disruption. And finally, we have a process to ensure that we can keep our plan relevant and up to date. By doing things in this way, developing a business continuity plan is made much easier because we can break the process down into a series of manageable steps and ensure that once developed, specific parts of the plan are owned by specific people. Building plans in this way ensures that the plans are usable when they are required. In a pressurized situation, people don't read manuals. They need a source of quick reference for guidance. That's why we don't provide a huge document as a template. They just don't work. Our aim is to produce a series of information resources so that the business continuity needs and capabilities of an organization can be defined and regularly assessed with separate, concise plans that can be quickly referred to and used as guidance when needed. The training course is organized into 3 modules. Module 1, Building the Business Continuity Plan. This will show you how to quickly develop a comprehensive business continuity plan for your organization. Module 2 covers incident management, which is the process of gaining command and control of a major incident and activating the relevant parts of the business continuity plan. Module 3 covers oversight, assurance, and awareness, which shows you how to keep your hard work fresh, up to date, and relevant to the needs of your organization. If you're really pushed for time and need to get underway quickly, then view modules 1 and 2. Then purchase and download the templates. You can take module 3 later. Your download will include all templates associated with module 3, as well as those for modules 1 and 2. Enjoy the course and feel free to ask questions by contacting me at the email address shown or via LinkedIn. We are now going to start the process of creating a business continuity plan for your organization. Each stage has one or more document templates associated with it, and they will help you to capture the necessary information to build your plan. And as we go through each topic, we'll be showing you worked examples of each activity. The topics we'll be covering in this module are defining priorities and tolerances, building core business continuity capabilities including information technology and workplace recovery, creating functional and departmental action plans for the recovery management of operational priorities, and developing communication strategies. As we walk through the process, we'll be showing worked examples of each step, including a priorities and tolerances assessment, examples of IT and workplace recovery plans, and the development of concise tactical plans and communications facilities to support the resumption of operational priorities. This is the most important part of your business continuity initiative. Although there's plenty more to do before we have a fully developed business continuity plan, this stage of development creates the foundation and defines the scope of the business continuity plan. And for this reason, it's really important that your business continuity arrangements are well aligned with the operational priorities of your organization. So the first thing we need to do is to understand what activities we perform as an organization and what our priorities are for continuing our business in the event of a disruption. The best way to think of this is to consider what people outside of the organization rely on us to do and what keeps our business alive on a day-to-day basis. These will be areas that accept business, process or manufacture orders, deliver services, or in some organizations maintain safety. This is a crucial first step in developing your business continuity plan, identifying what those priorities are and how sensitive they might be to disruption. Having established our operational priorities and their tolerances for unavailability, we then need to establish what things we need in place for them to continue to operate. This is sometimes referred to as dependency analysis. Basically, it's understanding what parts of our organization's infrastructure absolutely have to be in place so that our operational priorities can continue at an acceptable level. These dependencies fall into four main categories: information technology, the critical systems and communication systems that we need; workplace, the premises and specialized equipment that we need; people, the skills and number of employees we need to perform critical activities; supply chain, for stock and raw material. We need this information so that we can understand the resources most needed, ensure that we understand how robust these dependencies are and whether they can be recovered to effectively mitigate the risks associated with operational disruption or compromise, and to understand what parts of the organization will need to provide input to further develop our business continuity capabilities. So this stage helps us to understand what we'll need in a number of different scenarios and who needs to have input into confirming and building our capabilities in this area. Let's now take a walkthrough of a completed business continuity priorities assessment. Here's an example of a template that can be used to establish business continuity priorities and tolerances. Along the top rows, we list each of our priority services. In the rows beneath, we have listed our most likely exposures, which in this example are related to loss of reputation or customer goodwill, legal or regulatory obligations, and contractual liabilities. At the intersection of each product or service and the exposure, we're going to record what we think our tolerances are with regard to disruption of these services. Having captured the information about what we do and its sensitivity to disruption, we'll then turn our attention to understanding what we will need to have in place and available so that operations can be recovered to a level that effectively mitigates the exposures that we have identified. All organizations are different, of course, but generally speaking, the recovery capability of your operational priorities will be supported by 5 key parts of your organization's infrastructure, such as information systems, any specialized equipment that you need, raw materials, third-party services, and of course, your workplace. Let's take a look at what this spreadsheet looks like when we've populated it with some data. Here we can see a completed priorities and tolerances assessment. Let's walk through the results and see what it tells us. This example has identified 5 priority tasks, and we can see that the risks associated to the organization's reputation and goodwill of its customers could be quite quickly compromised by an operational disruption. In a matter of hours, in fact. Regulatory issues, though important, are not that urgent. 2 of the services are subject to contractual commitments. The new accounts process needs some specialized equipment to operate normally. We don't need any more materials for any of these priority services, and we rely on access to a third-party service to perform credit checks within the new account service. Let's now look at information systems and workplace requirements in more detail. As part of this activity, we have identified key systems that will need to be available, and if recovery of them is required, how quickly they would need to be restored. We now need some information from the IT function to ensure that these systems can be recovered within the required time frame. Voice communications will always be important, particularly if the organization operates a call center. When we think about workplace requirements, we're thinking about loss of access to our business premises and how we accommodate staff who are directly involved in operating priority tasks. We may need to provide temporary accommodation for some, others may be able to work remotely, and others still may need specially configured working accommodation. Alternative working accommodation can be provided in a number of ways, with a work area recovery provider, for instance, who will provide workspace on contractually agreed terms. Hot desking at an office services organisation may be an option, and if you have alternative sites of your own, you may be able to accommodate displaced employees there. These are all options for future consideration, and we will be dealing with these in the next stage of this module, establishing core capabilities. We've now covered what needs to be done to establish your organization's operational priorities. But let's now think about how we get that done. The best approach is a collaborative exercise, first with senior managers to get a high-level steer, and then once the priorities and tolerances have been identified, working with a small group of representatives from each of the areas identified as a priority to better understand those parts of the organization's infrastructure that support them. Having the senior management input at this stage provides direction and scope for the project. This is a really important step because many business continuity initiatives get bogged down and grind to a halt because the senior management of the organization have not been involved in this initial activity. By subsequently involving representatives from the priority operational areas, the more detailed information related to systems, staff numbers, etc. is gathered. To get the most out of these sessions, you'll need to set the scope and expectation for the participants. Take a look at this sample workshop agenda for some guidance. In this stage, we have laid the foundations for the development of the business continuity plan. We've considered business priorities and exposure thresholds, and then identified the core capabilities that we need to have in place to ensure that we can continue to deliver products and services at an acceptable level, even in the event of a major operational disruption. The next stage will cover the development of core business continuity capabilities to meet the needs of our operational priorities. The checklist shown will help to ensure that you have all of the necessary information in your priorities and tolerances assessment. This checklist is included in the templates download from our website. In this stage, we're going to cover developing the foundation of a business continuity plan. These are the things that almost every business continuity plan will contain, regardless of the specific nature of the business, and there are three parts to this. First, the provision for resilience and recovery within the IT infrastructure, considering alternative workplace arrangements, and ensuring the continuity of voice communications. These are sometimes known as core strategies for business continuity because they form the intrinsic recovery capability of the organization as a whole. Each of these core strategies is worth documenting, and not just for auditing purposes, but because they form a useful reference point which enables sharing of information and facilitates effective review and confirmation activity. During the assessment of priorities and tolerances, we identified the critical dependencies for our operational priorities, such as IT and the physical workplace. We now need to share some of this information with a number of specialists within our organisation to confirm that current recovery capabilities align with our organisation's business continuity needs. There's no set order for obtaining these assurances, but for the purposes of this example, we'll start with IT. Going back to our priorities and tolerances assessment, we established our critical systems, and this now needs to be shared with the IT function so that they can understand the organization's needs and confirm that recovery capabilities are in line with these needs. But just a few things to bear in mind with this activity. The IT specialist will see the IT infrastructure from a very different perspective to the user community. Most end users see the front end of their organization's infrastructure. That's the applications they use on a daily basis. IT specialists look at all the underlying components such as networks, servers and services. That's the things that need to be in place so the users can access and use the critical applications that they rely on. How all this fits together can be complex, so your IT colleagues may not be able to provide a quick answer to the question, how quickly can you recover our ERP system? So you'll need to give your colleagues some time to come up with the answers. One person may not have all the answers. Your priorities and tolerances assessment may have to be shared between several specialized functions within the IT organization so that a complete response can be delivered. And also, this activity can throw up other issues and possibly projects if shortfalls in recovery times are identified. Improving resilience and recovery times takes time and money, so resources may have to be found if shortfalls are to be addressed by technology solutions. Your IT function needs to update the critical application recovery requirements with the current recovery capabilities for these systems. As you can see from the example above, shortfalls have been highlighted, so decisions whether or not to upgrade IT capabilities may be needed at this point. Hopefully, this will not be the case with your plan. If it is, you may have to modify recovery requirements or seek support for investing in improved recovery capabilities. Our objective at this stage is to obtain the following assurance with regard to our IT recovery capabilities. That systems can be restored and recovered in line with the needs of the organization. That there is clear ownership of the recovery arrangements for each different component of the IT infrastructure, and that the recovery arrangements have been proven to work as assumed. As we mentioned earlier, there are several good reasons to have some kind of high-level narrative of the overall approach to IT infrastructure resilience and recovery. It can serve as a useful reference when re-evaluating IT infrastructure recovery capabilities, whilst also providing a useful reference for third-party reviews. And it can save an awful lot of time for your colleagues by avoiding them providing the same information to several different stakeholders. The first part of the overview looks at preventative measures that have been taken to make the IT infrastructure more resilient to disruption. It covers the physical environment of the data center, network resilience, and data storage. The document continues to describe specific measures for critical applications and, of course, the backup and recovery processes for both systems and data. The overview moves on to cover how IT infrastructure will be recovered in the event of failure at a physical location, provision for user access when systems at a backup location are used, and finally a policy for testing and review of backup procedures. Some question the need for these documents, but they do serve several important purposes. First, they form a concise source of reference of the measures and facilities that are in place to create resilience and facilitate recovery. They provide useful information for auditors and other third parties who may need to understand the big picture regarding your IT recovery capability, and they provide a point of reference to review and confirm that the facilities you have remain aligned to the needs of the organization. We are now going to take a look at workplace recovery, the alternative facilities available in the event that the main place of business becomes unavailable. Workplace recovery approaches overlap other approaches within the overall business continuity plan. That's because workplace recovery covers a range of alternate working arrangements including physical accommodation, employee transport and remote working. So while physical accommodation and staff transport might fall within the responsibilities of the facilities management function, the provision of remote working capabilities will most likely fall to the IT function. So accepting that there may be some overlap of responsibilities, the things that we need to consider when developing an approach to workplace recovery are: where will people go if our normal place of work is unavailable? They could work remotely. They could go to another location if the organisation has one, or they could go to a work area recovery provider if the organisation has arranged one. We also need to think about how will they get to alternative accommodation. Will we lay on transport? Do we expect employees to use their own transport? And will we reimburse additional expenses incurred in doing so? What capacity do we need at the alternative accommodation? And for remote workers, do we have the necessary technology services and licenses to support a rapid spike in the number of users accessing systems remotely? A workplace recovery plan will cover a number of considerations, including alternative premises, which may already be part of an organization's physical assets, such as other locations, or it may include arrangements with a specialist provider of work area recovery services. Where feasible, it may include a work from home strategy, and also an approach to mobilizing alternative workplaces, such as transport arrangements for moving staff, and possibly kitting out of alternative premises. We're now going to look at the detail of a workplace recovery plan. But before we do, let's remember that there are a whole host of options available for providing alternative workplace facilities. They tend to fall into four categories. First, contractual arrangements with specialized workplace recovery providers. These organizations may provide additional services such as IT and telephony recovery. In this respect, they can provide a one-stop shop. And from a management perspective, this can relieve a lot of effort in establishing an alternative workplace because you are dealing with a specialist firm. But there are costs involved, especially if you want a mothballed environment that's kept for your own exclusive use. Shared facilities are cheaper, but are normally provided on a first-come, first-served basis. So check how many times a supplier of these services has subscribed a particular location to several customers. Working from home is an option. You'll need to check with your IT colleagues that the IT infrastructure has sufficient capacity and licenses to support a significant increase in remote access users. Remember that the priorities and tolerances assessment identified the work from home requirement for each operational priority. Using another location belonging to your organization could be an option. This can be the easiest option because no contractual arrangements are necessary and considerations relating to access to IT systems should be relatively straightforward. Bear in mind though that with this option things could change. Locations may be downsized or occupancy increased, and this could compromise your plans when they're needed. You could use an office services organization, but bear in mind that you may well be sharing with many other businesses, and this could create complications with confidentiality and continuity of access to equipment and resources. Most of the information that we need in terms of requirements for our relocation plan can be obtained from the priorities and tolerances assessment that we completed earlier. This has established at a departmental level what alternative working arrangements are required by each activity within the organisation. From colleagues in facilities and IT, we have established our current ability to accommodate these requirements, and hopefully they will be sufficient. If they're not, we need to highlight this and consider whether we need to acquire additional resources or go back to the representatives of each activity and ask whether they could accept this. In the example shown, the spreadsheet has been configured to highlight any accommodation sources that have been oversubscribed. As you can see, there's more demand for accommodation at the work area recovery site than can be provided under current arrangements. We therefore need to attend to this and may require approval to either acquire more accommodation or adapt requirements so that undersubscribed resources can be used instead. Note also that we have considered the logistics of getting people to alternative locations. Is there sufficient car parking space? Are alternative locations serviced by public transport, and is it feasible to use this? Have we arranged contracts with transport organisations to provide transport when needed? Remember, this may need to accommodate people moving to several different locations. In addition to the above information, it's also necessary to capture some additional information in a document which contains details of all of the underlying arrangements, such as the organisations that we have contractual relationships with and the details of those arrangements. Here's an example of a template that can be used to maintain information about workplace recovery requirements. Whereas the spreadsheet was used to hold tabular data and highlight any pinch points between requirements and capacity, this document contains reference information about specific aspects of the workplace recovery plan. In this document, we provide some further details relating to the specific resources at each location and directions covering how to get there. A seating plan is also particularly useful. There's also information on who is responsible for managing the contract with the work area recovery provider, if there is one, and how long the contract runs for. Recording this information provides the basis to periodically review the workplace recovery plan and confirm that it continues to meet the business continuity requirements of the organisation. And then we describe what transport arrangements have been put in place. Keeping lines of communication open during a crisis is essential. So what happens if for some reason you can't get into your normal place of work? You can't allow the phones just to ring out. That's a surefire way to lose customer confidence, and there are several ways this could happen. Your business premises could be locked down due to a Legionella outbreak, preventing anyone entering the premises until they are clear. Fire, flood, or other extreme weather damage could prevent access to the physical workplace, but telephony services will remain intact. Or failure of on or off-premise communications equipment can render voice communications inoperable. Regardless of the root cause, your ability to make and receive telephone calls will likely be critical to protecting your business. But there are several options available to you depending on your needs. You could facilitate call center workers working from home, as many hosted PBX or ACD services can provide access to call center functions via an internet connection and a headset. You could have a backup site. At the most expensive end of the scale, you could have a complete mirror image of your call center set up in another location that's far enough away to be on a separate power grid or far enough away geographically not to be influenced by natural events. The challenge with this model is not just the cost, but transport arrangements can be a major consideration. The third option is to fall back to another call center you may have. This may reduce overall capacity, but calls are still being answered. Overall, the choice of your solution will depend on the reliance of your organization on voice communications. Even if you don't have a call center, if you have an on-premises switchboard, you will need to think about creating a capability to divert incoming calls. For this, you'll need several key pieces of information, such as how many numbers you need to switch, what numbers need to be diverted, what numbers they are to be diverted to, how to initiate the divert, and how to cancel the divert so that you can return to business as usual. Let's now take a walk through of a completed call divert procedure. The first page contains some general details and information on how long it takes to initiate and reverse a divert. This part is really important because it's outside of the control of the organization. They are completely dependent on the service provider for the turnaround time. The second page provides the details of the service provider contacts required to set up the diverts. Remember that the service provider may also require that the request is made by pre-authorized individuals. The third page provides the detail of the numbers which are to be diverted and where they are to be diverted. The number of diverted numbers should correspond to the number identified in the priorities and tolerances assessment. That's about it for voice and telephony recovery. You should, however, bear in mind that the procedure outlined above may need to be modified in accordance with the options provided by your telecoms provider and the telecoms equipment that you operate. In this stage, we have looked at creating core capabilities to provide a foundation for business continuity. These core capabilities are establishing an IT infrastructure that we are confident will recover IT systems in line with operational priorities, creating workplace recovery capabilities so that we can ensure that we can continue activities even if we lose access to our normal place of work. And finally, developing approaches to telephony and voice recovery so that we can remain in contact with the outside world should a major incident occur. All of these core capabilities have been developed in line with the priorities and tolerances assessment created at the start of the project. The checklist shown will help to ensure that you have captured all of the necessary information to develop core recovery capabilities for your organization's infrastructure. The checklist is included in the templates download from our website. At this stage of the business continuity plan development process, we concentrate on the specifics of recovering the priority activities of our organization. Remember, we have already established our core capabilities, and these have been driven by our priorities and tolerances assessment. Our core capabilities have provided a general platform for enabling recovery, but we'll still need to think how specific parts of the organization, those directly involved in meeting operational priorities, for instance, will operate during a major incident. So what we'll need to think through for these areas are issues such as who the leadership team will be, the roles and responsibilities of the leadership team, how the leadership will interact and communicate with the incident management team, details of the workplace recovery location and their facilities, who goes where, what they do and when, what actions to take during the initial stages of an incident, and what actions to take if the business continuity plan is invoked. Let's take a look at an example. Before we start to look at a completed plan, we need to think about what things should be taken into consideration when developing an action plan for the recovery of priority activities. Your core capabilities can be affected in a number of ways during a major disruption. For instance, if a building has been partially damaged or is affected by something like a Legionella outbreak, it may not be safe for people to use, although most IT facilities may be up and running and be able to be managed and accessed remotely. Similarly, IT systems may be impacted by a software failure, a hardware failure, or an environmental incident in the data center. In this instance, the workplace is intact, but IT needs to be restored at an alternative location. So there are several main considerations to take into account when developing action plans for priority activities. If we can't use our normal workplace, but IT systems are intact, where do we go and who goes where and when and how do we get access to systems? If IT systems are compromised but our premises remain usable, how will we access them? If we can't access our premises and IT systems are compromised, where do we go and who goes where and when, and how do we get access to systems and what do we do when they are restored? If critical equipment is lost, how can we replace and reinstall it? What will we do if the location where the equipment is installed is compromised? What alternatives might be open to us? And finally, will the business cycle be a consideration? Will certain times, i.e. such as month end, be more sensitive than others? Here's an example of a recovery plan template that can be used for a departmental or process recovery plan. It's just a few pages long and is in tabular format for quick reference. Let's take a walkthrough of each section. Firstly, we define the leadership team, the group of people who are going to be undertaking specific tasks and actions associated with managing and recovering from the disruption. As you can see, we have basic information such as name and contact details. Each person in the leadership team has a defined role. Note that there is a specific role for incident team liaison. This creates a single point of contact between the recovery team and the incident management team, which will be especially important in the early stages of any incident or crisis when the level of impact is in the process of being understood. This part of the plan defines the communications facilities available to the recovery team and any details of how they access these services. The next section contains details of key contacts, which could be external as well as internal contacts. There's more detail on the particular topic of communicating with different audiences in stage 4 of this module, communication strategies. On the second page, we break down the key actions for each role by scenario, and in this case we have identified 3 possible scenarios, which are loss of workplace, loss of IT systems availability, and loss of staff availability. Of course, an incident could create more than one of these scenarios, so the consequences of this will need to be considered when developing action plans. Sometimes it's helpful to develop checklists for each role and scenario to help the person in that role ensure that they have taken all necessary steps. And it's always good practice to consider how different phases of the business cycle could affect actions to be taken, such as at month end and during financial reporting periods. The third page shows a relocation matrix for the specific action plan. When we developed our priorities and tolerances assessment, we identified the total staff requirement for workplace, remote working, and any other locations. At this stage, when developing action plans for specific activities that support our operational priorities, we identify which individuals go where and their contact details. Note that the last column provides a means to perform a roll call, so that during invocation we can use this document to confirm that we have the required number of people in the right place. Let's now have a brief recap. We've looked at creating action plans for the most important activities in our organisation. We've introduced a template that can be used as a reference to prompt those who have specific roles and responsibilities and given them the basic information that they need to stay in touch with each other and with the incident management team. The template has been designed to be concise and accessible rather than a long multi-page narrative. We have provided a structure for key steps to be taken during incident notification, which is essentially a standby and prepare approach, and steps to be taken when invocation of the plan is underway. We now need to consider support services within our organisation, such as finance for instance, who may not have direct customer or stakeholder impact, but do provide important support to the organisation and may have specific roles to play during a major operational disruption. Support services such as HR, finance, etc., although not customer focused, have an important role to play, especially if the incident is protracted. They too should have a prepared plan using a similar recovery plan template. The format of the plan for support services departments is very similar to the template used for creating business continuity action plans for priority operational activities. We have now covered what we need to do in terms of developing plans for priority activities and support services and provided a format for capturing the relevant information. We now need to think about how we will get the plan development activity underway. As before, you'll need to collaborate with several colleagues to develop these plans, and you'll also need the results from the priorities and tolerances assessment. A facilitated workshop is the best way forward for developing action plans. You can introduce the work done thus far, introducing the core capabilities that each activity needs to bear in mind when defining their recovery approach. Then ask your colleagues to think specifically about their areas of the organization and how they would work within these capabilities to recover their activities. It's best to do this on a function by function basis. Otherwise, there may be too many people with different perspectives in the same workshop. Limiting the workshop to one functional group at a time will help to maintain focus. It's often helpful to let people know what's expected of them, what the scope of the workshop will be, and what preparations participants need to make so that they can get the best out of the workshop. A quick preview of a suggested workshop invitation and agenda is just coming up. An infographic to further focus the thoughts of workshop participants can also help preparation beforehand. Here's an example of a workshop invitation and agenda. And here's an example of the infographic for the guidance of workshop participants. Your functional and departmental plans can be considered complete when you can answer yes to the questions in this checklist. The checklist is included in the templates download from our website. Communication strategies are one of the most crucial parts of the crisis or incident management process. It's basically the glue that holds response and recovery activities together. To lay the foundation for an effective communications framework, a number of factors need to be considered, such as who we will need to communicate with, and these will be both internal and external parties, who will manage communication with them, at what stage of our incident management and recovery activities will we engage with these groups, which channels of communication are most appropriate to use. Will it be social media, SMS, websites, helplines, or a combination of these? Creating a matrix that defines these audiences, responsibilities, and communications channels forms a fundamental part of any business continuity plan. This part of Module 1 covers that topic and guides you through a completed business continuity communications framework. It's important to bear in mind that some methods of communication are better suited to different audiences than others. For instance, internal communications can be performed by using email and any corporate intranets, if these are available. Remember, if you rely on these for incident communications, you will lose your ability to reach out to staff and recovery teams if your IT systems are unavailable. SMS is an option and is not normally reliant on internal IT, but it does rely on the fact that you have to have up-to-date contact information for everyone that you may need to communicate with. Also, although SMS is suitable for short update messages, it is not really suitable for conducting any kind of meaningful dialogue. Social media is good for generic communication, for instance to a wide customer base, and does not require that you have huge contact lists. Your current social media following will be updated as you post. But remember to be careful what you post. Social media updates can travel fast and last a long time. Other external communications can be performed by conventional means, such as telephone. This is most appropriate for regulatory bodies where there may be a generic point of contact rather than a specific person, and indeed for direct contact with key accounts or customers. Choosing the right communications approach relies on considering the audiences who might receive messages from your organization during a major incident, and the content they may need, and the best way of delivering that content. Bear in mind that you may need specialists to help with some parts of your communication strategy. Corporate communication specialists can be especially helpful when developing communications approaches for external audiences such as the media. Social media specialists can help with specific platforms that your organization uses on a frequent basis, and your legal or compliance specialists can help with communicating with regulatory agencies. When a major operational incident occurs, there will be a lot of people who will be looking for information and guidance. These people will be both inside the organization and outside of it. Staff will want to know where to go and what to do. Customers may be concerned about deliveries, support, and availability of other services offered by your organization. And don't forget, the media may see a good story and want to speak to someone about the consequences of the incident and what your organization is doing about it. In this stage of the course, we will be concentrating on establishing a framework to support lines of communication to all affected parties during an incident. Our initial focus will be on internal communication, and then, during Module 2, Incident Management, we will look at external communication in more detail. As regards communication between recovery teams, we have some fairly straightforward choices. The majority of communications within individual recovery teams will be via telephone or text, so basic contact lists will be sufficient for this. But what if several teams need to discuss issues and options? This may require that several people can communicate with each other simultaneously. For this, we might need a conferencing capability, and this can be provided in a number of ways. The conferencing facilities of mobile phones could be used. That's providing everyone knows how to use them. Your organization may have a conference calling service, and this could be used providing it's not dependent on the availability of your own telephony system, which could be affected or unavailable. You could use a third-party service, or an outsourced video-based conferencing service could be used. Either way, you'll need to consider providing some capability for several people to collaborate verbally during an incident. One final consideration with your chosen communication strategies is to ensure that those who will be using them are proficient in their use and operation. Keeping employees up to date with developments during a crisis is essential and can pose a challenge if normal methods of mass communication such as email are not available. Other options are available, but bear in mind internal communication should be just that, internal. So the choice of mass communications method needs to be effective but private. There are several options for this. Firstly, internal social media posts. These are quite useful because they do not require that huge contact lists are maintained. Employees can subscribe to a controlled group and will be alerted when updates are made. Commercial SMS solutions are available which can send hundreds of SMS messages to groups and subgroups. SMS messaging, however, requires contact details to be maintained and continually updated, although most available solutions do provide ways to automate this. Many organizations use a commercial SMS notification service for mass communications because they're generally hosted services and therefore not dependent on your own IT systems to be available, and they provide an automated means to ensure that contact details are kept up to date and also provide security and privacy over message content. When you have decided on the best communications options to use, you can put this information on a template as guidance for the recovery teams to use when they formulate their plans. Who has overall ownership of these communication strategies? Up to now, it's been relatively straightforward. The ownership of each functional recovery plan is clear and our internal communications are relatively straightforward. We just have to choose a relevant communications channel and let our colleagues know what this is and how to access it. But external communication is a little more complicated. We have to consider outside parties, what their information needs might be, and the most effective way to engage with them. In the next module, we're going to focus on incident management and the structure of the team that supports it. You'll see that the incident management team takes overall control of a major incident, deciding which aspects of the business continuity plan are to be invoked. The incident team has a dedicated role for communications, which can be a multi-person role. The people performing this role would have the overall responsibility for managing communications during a major incident. The communication strategy, which includes issuing updates and messages to external parties outside of the organization, is primarily coordinated by the incident management team. So ownership of the overall communication strategies lies with the communications lead within the incident management team. This is most likely to be a communication specialist from your corporate communications function. Here's an example of an external communication strategy which could be included in an incident management plan. It covers all of the key points we mentioned earlier, namely the audiences we'll need to communicate with, the responsibility for managing communication with them, the medium of communication used such as social media, SMS, websites, helplines, or a combination of these. Always keep in mind that the overall purpose of your communication strategy is to receive and provide situational updates and issue instructions to various groups of people with different information needs. Internal and external communication needs will tend to become clearer as your plans become more detailed. The method of communication is determined by what is the best match for the audience and the kind of information being provided. For instance, SMS is great for mass communication and short, simple messages, but it's difficult to hold a conversation via SMS. Technologies such as social media can help when spontaneous, richer communications are required, and they can help to communicate with external parties for whom you don't have individual contact details. Telephone or video conference calling facilities are helpful for teams that are in the thick of it, such as the incident management team and the recovery teams. Conference calls allow for discussions to take place and for information to be exchanged quickly and effectively. It's worth mentioning that for internal communications at least, instant communication cannot be effective if it relies solely on electronic messaging. People need to talk, discuss, and exchange views. It can sometimes be a challenge to kickstart something like this, and we want to make sure that participants in this activity understand what's required and come to any meetings or workshops well prepared. Here's an example of a workshop invite and agenda which can be used for that purpose. In this module, we have looked at the development of communication strategies. Communication strategies are driven by the audience we need to reach and the kind of information they will need as the organization manages an incident and recovers its priority activities. Different channels of communication will be more suitable for specific audiences. And remember that your communication strategies are the glue that holds everything together in the middle of a major incident. Your communication strategies can be considered complete when you can answer yes to the questions in this checklist. That's the end of Module 1, Building the Business Continuity Plan. We've walked through the process of creating a business continuity plan stage by stage. We've established our priorities and tolerances. Based on these, we have built basic capabilities to recover the organization's infrastructure in terms of voice communication, information systems, and the physical workplace. We've created communications plans so that we have the right medium of communication for the right audience at the right time, and we have created brief, concise plans for specific activities and processes. In Module 2, we're going to cover incident management, and we'll start by explaining why incident management is not quite the same as business continuity.